Hi, everybody. My name is Bob, and I'm an alcoholic, etc. And I want to thank Pat for asking me to come down here and lead. And I'm honored to be in a room of Alcoholics Anonymous because this is where I learned about my higher power. And I want to mention that I think it was Steve and David mentioned God in their brief pitch to you guys, and my pitch tonight I gave some thought to the idea of speaking about humility, which is the seventh step, and it's one of the principles of this meeting, and I think it has a lot to do with our higher power. I want to qualify as briefly as I humanly can because it's not I don't want this to be about what I did. I did everything you guys did, same amount, maybe this less amount, but it all culminated. And some of the guys in here have heard this when my desperation had a collision with a moment of clarity. And that moment of clarity was when my son, age 19, came up into the kitchen area of my house where I had been living since my wife had split 30 days ago or 45 days ago before that. And bill collectors were calling. The place was a pig pen. I was smoking a couple joints out in the backyard, having some beer, shots of tequila. Guy was waiting for the Coke dealer to come around. So I was in bad shape, and I'd been doing that for a considerable period of time. He walked up from the lower part of the house, and he just stood there and looked at me. I mean, we're talking about a 19-year-old. His name was Paul. I called him by his nickname, which was Precious Paul. Precious Paul just stood there, and looked at his father, who was in that condition. And I just absorbed it. I didn't say a thing. He wasn't saying a thing. And for some reason, I was struck by some power greater than me. I walked over and poured the beer down the sink, and I got to AA. I'd had a little touch of AA once, but it didn't last very long. And I started going to AA, and I kept going to AA, and here I am, 20 years later. I've been sober, no drugs, no alcohol for 20 years, and I believe it was my higher power that reached his arm out of the wherever he is and just grabbed me by the throat and said, "You're done, dude. You're done." So what did I do then? It was, I quit. I had quit drinking and doing all that shit maybe thousands of times because I knew I was an alcoholic, but I didn't. Everything was going real good for me in my brain, which was about as big as you could set it on a pinhead. Because I was doing the thinking, and my thinking got me in here. I got to meet a whole bunch of nice people, but. So I started going to AA, and I started doing the steps, and I kept plugging through. And as I progressed in this quest to become sober, not only liquid sober, but emotionally sober, all the other sobriety that we talk about in here that makes us good people, makes us good fathers, husbands, uncles, aunts, and etc. It was because I had difficulty accepting the idea of getting emotional sobriety because I held on to self-reliance. And then Patch called me and said, "Hey, would you like to lead the meeting?" And I said, "Great." So what would I talk about? I thought this is the 7th month, so let's talk about step 7, because it was these steps, wherever they are, I don't know, on my right, I can't even read them, but the steps became the steps, the big book, the meeting, all you guys in here and everything I learned about life in here became my higher power. And I got that brilliant idea, not on my own, as I get all my ideas, it's from some other source. In the 12 and 12 in chapter 2 about coming to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, it said make AA your higher power. So I did make AA my higher power, and it's embodied in all the steps. And I try to keep my life within the confines of each step when I need it brought up. And so Pat's called me, I said, 7th step, I'm going to do this. And I got the daily reflection out, having to do with today's date, interestingly enough. I have age-related macular degeneration, so I very hard to read. So I'm going to ask Pat to read 4 lines from the top of the daily reflection. And by the way, the word "we" appears in there, which is a very interesting word. But go ahead, Pat, please.
July 13, humility is a gift. As long as we placed self-reliance first, a genuine reliance upon a higher power was out of the question. That basic ingredient of all humility, a desire to seek and do God's will, was missing. 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, page 72.
So, when I saw the phrase, the basic ingredients of humility was missing, I got hit right in the jaw. Because until I continued to seek and do, in other words, look and do, get in action, God's will for me, therein was when I was going to start really achieving sobriety. And this is now something that I've developed over the years. I didn't get it on the first 3 weeks I was in AA, trust me. Took this God business, confused the hell out of me. I didn't know what the fuck everybody was talking about. You know, some of these people were talking, and it was such a foreign concept. I was 12 years in a Roman Catholic background, schools, and all that stuff was stuck down my throat, and I just was repulsed by all of that pomp and circumstances. It's good for some people, it was horrible for me. But so now I've developed this higher power, which I find embodied in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And this business of the self-reliance that I thought was doing so well in my life, I have now recognized was the exact reason I got my ticket in here, and the exact reason I was struggling with this idea of turning everything over to the will of the care and the will of my higher power. I just have to keep going back to step 3. Step 3, I made that decision a long time ago to turn my will and my life over to my higher power, to his care. So I keep doing it. Now, what happens, I go through my daily life, and with the jackass on the freeway, not me, of course, and interferes with me. What I do is I just start thinking about what would God do? What would these guys in this AA meeting want me to do when I deal with an asshole like that? You don't need to rely on yourself and yourself bullshit. You know, all these character defects that we talk about in humbly asking God to remove come out in my life all the time. I thought I removed them when I, quote, did the 7th step. I went, God, remove my defects of character, and I was on to the next step. Well, that was bullshit. That was craziness. I got to do that every single hour of the day. Get God and make him a part of my life. I've got to seek and then do his will for me. And what is his will? It's embodied in applying the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's got me here 20 years sober. And to me, that's a miracle. Just like you guys that took those 23, 25, and Matt for 4, and another guy, and Curtis here now. And I gotta say, it's the ingredient. I'm excluding self-will out of and self-reliance out of my repertoire of ingredients in dealing with life on a daily basis, and I'm relying on my higher power to guide me. I always talk to my higher power. What should I do? What should I do? And once I take it easy, or as we say, easy does it, have these little conversations with my higher power, things start getting a lot better. I had a daughter that a year and a half ago died because of this miserable disease that every one of us have. She was 47. I'm telling you, I don't wish that on anybody, but I was coming out unglued. One evening, soon after all that happened, I just had a conversation with my higher power, and I said, "You're not running her life, Bob. God is. God is in charge of her life. God is in charge of your life. You take care of your own business. Stay sober. Try to carry the message of recovery to the next guy, just like all of you guys in here did for me." I wouldn't, and someone mentioned of the we word. I think of all the words in this 12 steps is the word we. It comes up more often than not. It even came up in this reading. I wish Patch could find it for me. There's no way I could find a 2-letter word in there. But other than, we. I think it's in there, Patch.
A lot of eyes. I don't see a we.
This might be in the last line. Maybe it's my imagination.
Carry on.
Okay. But so, and then one of the guys in here spoke about we. The reason I'm here sober and I'm living a reasonably comfortable, good life is because I am sticking to the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous in all my affairs, and I'm continuing to seek out the will of God and to do His will. For a long period of time after I got sober, I would seek God's will out, but I wouldn't do it. It's seek God's will out and then do His will. If I stick to that, I'll be all right. Now, I could go on and on, but I'm down. I think I've delivered the message of the necessity of, quote, humility in this idea of our 7th step and the character defects. And I hope my goal was to send a message to anybody that can be helped by my speaking. So thank you for letting me speak to you people. And I always enjoy being here. Thank you.